All right. I see there's a delay. Good. What's up, internet friends? First off, thank you to the Stimulus team for hosting all of this, putting it together, letting me come in here and just spiel stuff. Today is going to be a short segment about filmmaking. Where this could go in the future can branch into a lot of different things. Loads of stuff that can be talked about, stories that can be shared, but I kind of leave that up to you guys. We've got a few people following, which is great right now, and I know they sort of save these so they can be viewed afterwards. So feel free to share this around. The whole reason why this is happening is for response for COVID. These guys are, it's a bit of a fundraiser, and you'll be able to see on the Twitch website sort of how that all works and what happens. Yeah, but today we're going to share the first film I ever made, and it's because it's a film that is about process. It's about changing your perspective, and that's sort of what has been important to a lot of the creative community now, because their whole world's got thrown into chaos. I think since this is the first episode, the status of the filmmaking world is that it's been put on pause. Everybody I know, all their commercial jobs have stopped. Any production, whether it's documentary or narrative, everything has been just totally stopped. A few daring souls are trying to finish projects, make ends meet, do things like a little bit under the radar. The stories I've heard are of pretty safe ways of doing it. And me and my buddies, I've got a couple production partners here in town. We've been starting to think about, okay, how do we prepare for the opening back up, and what's going to be acceptable when things open back up? So keeping that in mind, looking for stuff that inspires us, looking for stuff that is even available to be used has become like kind of a priority. So after the film screens, it's going to be about a 15-minute piece, and there'll be some time for questions. So anybody who has questions, and it's kind of an allegory. It's an allegory for, like I said, changing your perspective, but taking the innards of something, putting them on the outside, and seeing what that does to change it. In this film, there's a man who builds a motorcycle, and his philosophy is about ripping the innards out and putting them on the outside. He likes to do it for fun. He likes to do it to get a reaction. He likes to do it to change people's minds about what they think motorcycles can be. And sorry about my phone there. When I learned about this project that he was doing, I thought what kind of inspired me was, why don't I take the whole process of making a film of who this guy is, because he's a bit of a townie. Everybody knows him or thinks they know him. And how could I tell a story about him in a way that people would see him in a different light? Anyway, I attempted to. Again, this was my very first film. I did the whole thing on myself. Got some help with music, some scoring from people, a friend, someone I met online in Australia. And yeah, it was fun. So I guess now I'll leave it up to the Stimulus team to roll it, and I'll be here when you get back.
I used to get mad at tools and things. I had an exposure meter that crapped out on a commercial we were doing in Westchester. And I took it outside. It was a $500 meter. And with all my force, I threw it against a brick wall. You couldn't even find the parts of it. The problem with contemporary things in general, not just bikes, is that everything is hidden. Everything, all the work. Why hide this? This is beautiful, this sort of polished steel and and the spot wells, or the wells, the line wells. I mean, it's just beautiful, clear coated. The process of working on it creates the vision of what it's going to be, so it evolves all the time. In the point of view is I had no idea what it was going to be when I started, but I would just start working on it and see where it went. Anything anyone builds is always affected by their sense of aesthetics and their sense of taste. And so this has shown me, and something I never realized about myself before, is that I love metal. I love the different colors, textures, and so all these things that I do are all influenced by this sort of growing love as metal as a media. The thing that took me the longest to learn was wiring electrical. I've figured it out enough that I can do it. Yeah, this is unusual, because what I've decided to do is, on this BMW, most BMWs, the Germans spent a lot of time and effort hiding every cable. And what the philosophy of this bike is to take everything that was hidden and make it visible. So I've taken every cable and tried to pull it off to show it, so that to me, you really get the feeling of motorcycle if you can see the systems. You look around the shop and there are a million different things. And if you look at it, it looks very complicated. But in fact, it's very simple. I think you surround yourself with things that feel comfortable. It's almost as if I have all the evidence of the different things I've been interested in my life, and I have them all in drawers. Organize it in terms of decades. You could have the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and in each one would be the parts of whatever you were interested in then. So in a way, my whole history goes into this bike, but it's not consciously, and I don't identify with it. It's just the reason that I kept the parts to begin with is they were really cool parts. And so I end up using them. And having a shop like that's wonderful. You can do almost anything in there. It isn't just bikes. It makes life easier. What do you think? Now we can get a really good idea of what that's going to look like. Oh, that's beautiful. These are the kind of moments where I just get amazing amount of joy when I see that something works aesthetically and it just looks perfect. Where's the fire extinguisher? It's right there, Calvin, up behind the plasma cutter on the shelf. It's a heavy little son. So the day I was going to start the bike, Calvin came over. Step one. Calvin is an ex-student, loves bikes, and so we're going to start the bike. Oh my God, look at that. There's a hole in the tank. Shit. It's the float. How the hell could that happen? Oh man, that's gonna take. This is stopping, which I find bizarre, which means we could still try to start it. We'll see what happens. This may not work. Engine start on. It's definitely not getting gas somewhere.
No.
It's too bad. When you're doing a freeform bike like this, you can never expect it to function that well. Just so it doesn't stress you out, you have to come back and say, okay, well, I'm going to deal with one or two of the issues. I'm going to tighten these bolts. I'm going to do this. There's no way I'm going to have the patience to go back and redo something, because this bike is not about redoing anything. It's about dealing with what you've got and fixing it in a funky way. Brass, you really can't weld, I don't think. It just disintegrates. What I have to do here is I have to make sure that this outer handle doesn't slip and turn. I drilled a hole and then I'm going to weld the aluminum under it. The chances of it not breaking again are probably 50%. If this holds, then I'll be able to start synchronizing the carbs. So my friends come over from time to time to look at this. They tend to get it right on the first bounce.
This is pretty cool.
This is...
With a saddle?
Yeah. I'd like to call it like gutter punk or apocalypse punk. If you were in the future after the apocalypse and you had to build something, what would it look like based on the availability of the parts that you would find in that environment? A couple of bikers came over and took one look at it and didn't stop laughing for 2 minutes. And that, to me, is the best reaction I can get, because it shows that they really appreciate, technically, the attitude of the solutions that are on the bike. You know, it's really strange because it crept up on me, the fact that it was almost done. The good news is I have 2 other ones ready to go. If this was the end of me working out here in the garage, it would be suicidal. It's unfortunate that kids think that if they spend $18,000 on a sport bike, that they're going to be admired. Where do their dreams go when they turn the key off at night? And it's sad, because it's the American way of living. The new car, the new house, the new bike, because it's not the pride of ownership, it's the pride of learning, it's the pride of building, it's the pride of creating something. What I realized about this bike on the first ride is it is insane to drive. It doesn't go that well. You have to lean over too much. The horse saddle is too slippery, so you tend to slide off of the bike. It's missing on one cylinder. The brakes don't work very well. Handlebars are loose. Just endless things that I have to fix. There are ways to build a bike to almost ensure that you will not have to debug much of it. And then there are ways to build a bike where you know you're going to have to debug it, but you really don't care. I think that this bike was never built to be ridden. It was meant to have people look at it and say, holy shit, look at this. This is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. And I think that, unfortunately, people don't look toward stuff that you do with your hands as aspirational when you're looking for work or going to school. The thing is, Seth, you're asking me to intellectualize something. But in fact, this bike has nothing to do with what I talk about. When I'm out in the workshop, and a lot of people will tell you this when they're out working with their hands, time stands still. It's my world. There's nothing. There's no politics. There's no wars. There's nothing. There's just this. So it's a kind of meditation for me. It's that simple. It's the end of the story. There is nothing more.
So should I speak Gaelic for him?
Yeah. So just, Jim, tell the camera what you think of all this.
I think it's just exquisite. I truly do. It's remarkable. I'd like to say something really smart, Jack, but I can't.
Sure
It's
you
a
can.
Fucking death trap. Look at this thing. What the fuck? But I love it. I mean, it's Jack, isn't it? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just an incredible mess.
All right. Yeah, that is awesome. So I see a couple questions and a couple comments. Guess I can fill you in a little bit about who this guy is and what he's doing now. And yeah, and if there's any other quick questions, we've got about 10 minutes left. So someone asked how I know him, and Jack was actually one of my first film teachers. Where do I begin? He taught me to take filmmaking a little bit more seriously, and he helped kind of push me onto a path that, because filmmaking, I've always been doing stuff with cameras. My friends and I have always used cameras as a way to, like, get other things done, do other types of projects, and he sort of showed me that filmmaking could be a career, I guess, or at least a thing that other people would take you seriously. It's an art form beyond just shooting something for the immediate pleasure of it. But the funny part is shooting something for the immediate pleasure of it is really the only reason why you want to be making films anyway. And sort of through some trial and error, I guess that's kind of how I learned to find my place in sort of this world. Because right now, I guess I should tell you a little bit about who I am. Probably should have started with this. I am a director and a director of photography, and I have a film studio out here in Venice, and we make documentary films. We do some commercial work, but our main thing is telling stories about people, trials that they've overcome, challenges that they currently are facing, and ways that they are empowering others to make positive impacts or have been empowered to make positive impacts. Getting back to who this guy Jack is, someone mentioned, he must be building many more motorcycles right now. And he still messes with motorcycles, but he's actually switched to making guitars. But he's still making them steampunk. So I wish I had a photo I could share of it. But he's done things like cutting a tuba in half and making that into a guitar. and he made a washboard guitar that he showed me a photo of, which looked really sweet. So through him, I've learned that creativity comes from process mostly, and curiosity plus the process of just making things as you feel like making them gives birth to a lot of unexpected stuff. And part of that unexpectedness is the response. Because how people respond to what you have made begins to inform the purpose of what you're making. Because a lot of people, when you make stuff, you don't really know why you feel compelled to make something, but that's the right way to go down that path. You shouldn't necessarily have to care about what people will care about. You should care about what you enjoy doing, but there's sort of a crossroads where you hit, where creativity begins to leave you unless you find a reason to, what's the right word? You find a reason to sort of evolve into the next thing. So I guess if this segment is to continue, and we're to show more, I have like loads of little short films like this. There's a lot of short films that my company has put together that can be worth talking about. It could become a series more about filmmaking specifics, like lighting techniques, types of cameras you can use, workflow. Basically, filmmaking itself is a constant process of problem solving, and knowing different tricks is really just having an open mind for how certain bits of equipment or certain workflows that you know about can be morphed to fit the bill of your current situation. Because filmmaking, and I'm assuming most other types of art can be like this, most of the time the final product is informed by what went wrong along the way and how that artist and creator was capable of combating the situation or rolling with the situation, or many people out here in Venice would rather say using love to combat that, to use that situation. There's no combating it. It's just about flowing like water. Everyone has their own perspective on it, and that's what's so kind of cool. But when you're learning about this stuff, when you're starting out, it's very easy to feel super overwhelmed. And it's also very easy to find your first few steps to get you moving, because the hardest part about creating anything is just taking those first few steps. Yeah, so this seems like a pretty good place to end it. Someone asked, where am I finding inspiration these days? That's a great question. And maybe I'll end with that before leaving you guys to the next folks. Inspiration right now is hard to find. And I kind of challenge anyone to find inspiration from their current daily situation, because their daily situation has most likely been flipped on its head. They're being put under pressure that they normally haven't felt ever before, or they're witnessing things that seem completely out of their control. And this new reality is a depressor. It's a depressor mostly because there's a lot of grief that's involved. Grief and fear that it will never go back to the way it was before, or, I can't imagine anything more sad than family members just suddenly disappearing in front of your eyes, your job disappearing in front of your eyes, just the way everything works, totally seeming to shift. And it really feels like it will never go back to normal. It's very scary, and it makes it very hard to find any motivation whatsoever. To combat that, I've done something that I never would have done before, which is deep dive all over the internet to try to find other people doing cool things. I normally don't do that. I don't like spending my time in front of screens, just because my whole life is for careers normally in front of screens. So I instead look in books and listen to music, and I do other things to sort of find inspiration. But those modalities tend to be restrictive, and I never really opened up my eyes to like, okay, what's actually out there and available and different things. So like, I'll use masterclass as the example. Bit the bullet, signed up for that, and I've been not studying any filmmaking techniques through there, but I've been studying about like Neil Gaiman and writing. His has been the one that's been the most interesting to me so far, because he brings this idea to the table that ideas are, he says it's from a confluence of things. I look at that just as inspiration is when things start colliding around you. Unexpected situations, when you see things that are seemingly meaningless, how someone might draw a picture, or someone's take on, like if they're doing a cover of a song, those inspire little moments of you inside of you, but they never really seem to add up to anything. But when you fill your mind with all of these little hiccups of curiosity, that's when ideas start to come to you in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And the only control you really have over your own body and mind is to try to find some relaxation point, so you're not critically thinking about too many things. And that's the one thing that all this time, because like for me, all of our commercial work has just stopped suddenly. And it was a very big adjustment to go back to like, wait, what do you even do with your time when no one is emailing you and no one's calling you, when you just have all the time in the world to yourself? So finding that sort of mental zen zone and then letting things just wash over you, that's been the most successful way of finding inspiration I've found so far. Someone asked, did I ride that motorcycle? I actually did not ride that motorcycle. Didn't really want to. It rode pretty well, but not super well. And Jack was just like, I don't want anybody to get hurt on this thing. It's a piece of art. It's not a working machine. So I don't think anybody besides himself has ever ridden that. All right. Trying to find my mental zen. That's right. Cool. So we're at 4:30. I guess I'll leave you there. If anyone has curiosity about film stuff, format, I can also bring other guests on. I can bring one of my partners at the studio on, and we can have a little bit more of a storytelling time about what it's been like to make certain films. We have an abundance of stories about dealing with issues, fun ones, scary ones, kind of absurd ones, the whole gamut. So there's always that. And one last time to remind everybody that this and all the other episodes that'll be coming out on Stimulus TV are to support COVID relief. I know that part of the plan for Stimulus is to donate like half the money to the creators. I'm going to be giving all my money to the COVID fund. And no one should donate if they feel they don't want to. Also, it's like just happy, this is just something for people to do, for people to watch, and also for me to do and have some fun. So that's why I'm here. But yeah, thanks for being here with me, Internet team. And yeah.